Hey guys, it's Christina, and today I'm going to be talking about every book that I read last year in 2024. Christina, it's almost March. Why are you doing this video now? Stop it. Stop it. It's fine. It's fine.
Editing Christina here to say that my mic wasn't on for the first book that I talked about, but after the first one, it gets better, I promise.
Okay, so I only read 14 books last year because it was my senior year of college and I was getting back into reading, and I think I was just focusing on reading other things. But I am excited to talk to you about all of them, and I'm doing them in chronological order. I only read one 5-star read last year. There was only one that I thought was 5 stars, and I can't wait to get to it and talk about it because it's one that you've probably read if you're watching booktube videos, and it took me a minute, but I finished it and it changed my life. The first thing that I finished last year, and this was kind of throughout last year, but I started it like toward the beginning of last year, All the Young Dudes by our Lord and Savior, Miss King Bean 89. Okay, so if you don't know what All the Young Dudes is, before I start to really freak out about it, it is a Marauders era fanfic. Stay with me if you're like, who are the Marauders? It is like the parents' generation of the Harry Potter cast of characters. This is like a canonical text in the Marauders fandom universe. People in the fandom have like dubbed this as like I said, like the canonical Marauders text. I mean, there's other huge fanfics that I'm actually currently reading right now. It was such a long time since I read a fanfiction before I read this, and I had been wanting to read it, and then multiple friends were like, Christina, you have to read it. Please read it. You have to read it. And so I finally bit the bullet and read it, and I'm really glad I did. I wanted to input these into Storygraph, and when I looked, it was like broken down into 3 volumes. Volume 1 is years 1 through 4. Volume 2 is years 5 through 7. And volume 3 is just 7 until the end. I'm looking at my notes right now, and I didn't rate the second volume anything, but I rated the first volume 4 stars and the last volume 4.5 stars. One of the things I love most about this fanfic, and I will get into what it's about in a second, is the time period that it takes place in. So it starts in the early 70s, and there are callbacks to culture throughout it. So it takes place over a couple decades, and there are songs in almost every chapter. There are books referenced, and there's an amazing playlist for it. If you look for it, there's many playlists that is like every single song that's ever referenced in All the Young Dudes, and I would listen to the playlist as I was reading it and have the time of my life. Also, the fashion, the things that people were wearing, the jokes that were made about like muggle clothes, like leather jackets and boots and stuff, and the way that the main character dresses when he's not at Hogwarts, it's like top tier. This fanfic is a Wolf Star fanfic, and if you don't know what that means, welcome to the internet. Wolfstar is the ship name between Remus Lupin and Sirius Black. It's a slow burn, like really slow burn with bisexual representation. So Remus Lupin in this fanfic has been a werewolf since he was really young, and he kind of gets tapped to be in Hogwarts, and when he goes to Hogwarts finally, you see him become friends with the Marauders slowly but surely, and you see him fall in love with Sirius Black again slowly but surely, and it's a slow burn with the best payoff ever. Like, maybe better than anything I've ever read in a traditional novel. This is the best fanfic I've ever read, which I feel like says a lot because I spent so much time in high school with my laptop like this close to my face just scrolling through fanfiction. I just really loved it. It filled me with a lot of joy, and it was more emotionally compelling than I could have given it credit for at the beginning. It's actually well written. Like one of the first things that I texted to one of my friends while I was reading it is like, I actually can't believe this is good. Like, this is actually like good. It's got an incredible cast of characters. So there are original characters in the fan fiction that don't show up in any of the Harry Potter books, or like maybe they get one reference one time in like one line of one book of Harry Potter, and this author fleshes them out and they have an actual consequential role in the narrative of this particular story, which is really satisfying. And it's great to dive so deep into a series that I have loved so much, and that has been, you know, a little tumultuous because of its creator. So it's cool to engage in this fan text that is actually a celebration of a lot of different people and identities and is like free from the ideology that has like really tainted some of the Harry Potter experience for a lot of people. I wrote, I love these characters so much, and it makes me happy that we get to have this universe to sink into with a warm cup of tea. I can't believe it's over. 10,000 heart emojis when I finished the last one. So all the young dudes, it's free. It's on Wattpad. No, not Wattpad. It's on AO3. Read it. It will take you a long time, but it's such a good thing again to sink into. It was just nice to have something to come back to that felt like home. The next book I read in 2024 was an Ali Hazelwood book, and this was my very first Ali Hazelwood book that I ever read, and it was Checkmate, and I listened to the audiobook, and it was narrated by Carissa Vacker, who is a really great narrator. I really liked this book. I liked it more than I thought that I was going to. I really felt that I was like sinking back into the things that I used to read in high school and like devour in high school, like contemporary YA romance, but in a slightly older, elevated way that made me engage with it a lot now as a 25-year-old. Checkmate is an older YA novel about protagonist Mallory Greenleaf, who's I think like 18 in the book, if I'm not mistaken. And she used to be very good at chess, like kind of a little bit of a prodigy, but she stopped because it, quote, led to the destruction of her family, according to the description. One day, her best friend kind of like coerces her into participating in a local chess tournament because her best friend is like on the chess team and they need one more player. So Mallory's like, fine, I will play chess this one time for this local tournament at a community center or whatever because you need me. Her opponent is, of course, none other than the king killer, Noah Sawyer, who's like this legendary bad boy of chess. I'm pretty sure he's ranked like #1 in the world, and she beats him. And he becomes obsessed with her. Mallory really wants to walk away from chess again, but she's given an opportunity to play chess for money, and the resources that would give her would really help her family situation. Nolan seeks her out and is obsessed with trying to play her again because of the way that she played chess. He has this like big respect and admiration for her game, and you see him trying to do that through the whole novel, and it's amazing. Like I said, Mallory needs the money for her family situation. Her mother suffers from chronic illness, and she's the oldest daughter of 2 younger sisters, and so she feels a lot of the responsibility to take care of her family. One of the reasons why she's even throwing herself this much into chess is because she doesn't have the stability to be able to go to college. She takes it upon herself to like have a job instead, and she loses that job, which is another reason why she really needs the money. I also love a training story. Like I really enjoy a training story, like seeing somebody get ready for a particular competition or tournament is something that I like reading about because I tend to hyperfixate a bit on things, and if I'm reading about a subject matter that I think is interesting, no matter what it is, I want to know everything about it. And the way that this book kind of takes you through it as Mallory is learning how to play chess in a competitive way because she can't get by on just her talent is incredibly entertaining, and it like for me sustained me through a lot of the novel. Like I would genuinely be looking forward to the scenes where she was playing chess against somebody else to listen to her internal monologue, how she thinks about opening moves. I knew that chess was difficult and it was a strategic game that people spent a lot of time trying to learn, but I don't think I understood the amount of time people spend like studying. Like she gets paid to study chess. Like half of her day is looking through a textbook and taking notes and trying to memorize opening maneuvers, and learning about stuff like that was really great. I mean, this book isn't like 100% accurate to the experience of playing competitive chess, which Ali Hazelwood mentions in her afterword, but it is still really engaging, and it like made me want to play chess, and I have already started to plan to like play chess on my own time. Speaking of the afterword, in the acknowledgments that Ali Hazelwood has at the end of the book, she talked about this being kind of a passion project and something that she'd been working on for a really long time, waiting for the right moment where she would think it was viable to release her little chess book, and you can feel her passion for it in the whole novel. And it's, again, one of the things that sustained me through the reading experience. When it comes to the characters in this book, Nolan is like one of my favorite MMCs I've ever read. Like I love Nolan Sawyer so much. He's like okay, if you thought like I hate everyone but you, right? Like that trope. I don't usually like that because usually the person is an asshole and like not a fun way. Like they're just kind of mean and only nice to one person, and I don't find that particularly interesting or attractive. The thing about Nolan is that he's broody and he's sarcastic and he's sardonic, but it comes out when people are provoking it because they, in fact, are the jerks. He's ultimately a deeply kind and considerate person. This book is also a bit of a slow burn, which I really like, and there were a lot of like giggling and kicking my feet moments. I can't lie. There's a moment where they're like at a party, no spoilers. They're at a party, they're playing a game that is not chess, and everybody leaves and it's just them very intently talking to each other, asking each other questions and playing this game. And while I was reading it, I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It was like that scene. When Nolan knows what he wants, he's incredibly direct, and Mallory has a lot more reservations just because of her whole situation. So it's interesting to watch them navigate that in their relationship in a respectful way, and sometimes not so respectful. I mean, obviously there's conflict. Mallory is a character that I really enjoyed. I honestly relate a lot to her. If they ever made a movie about this book, I would want to play Mallory Greenleaf. I really like Mallory Greenleaf. I like that she has a bit of an edge to her, but not in a way that is reductive to me, and a way that actually feels like she cares about other people and cares about being a good person. I think she's really funny. There were moments where I was laughing out loud in this book, and she's obviously incredibly smart and really determined and passionate. And so I'm a fan of Mallory, I'm a fan of Nolan, I'm a fan of this book. Pick up Check and Mate by Ellie Hazelwood. I really liked it. So after I read Check and Mate, I was like, I want this feeling again. I want to bottle this feeling and drink it, and I want to experience it one more time. And so I picked up The Love Hypothesis, and like, um, no, not quite. Not quite. So The Love Hypothesis is a fake dating women in STEM novel. Doesn't she have, it's like STEMinist novels, right? Isn't that what they're called? It's like kind of a fan fiction. Well, no, it's technically a fan fiction um about Kylo Ren and Rey from Star Wars. Raylo, but in the Star Wars canon, I think they're related, and in this book, they're not, which, thank God. I have only ever seen episode 4 of Star Wars. Sorry. So this book surrounds Olive, who's a third-year PhD candidate, and she is trying to convince her friend On that she is happy and that she is dating, and On is really skeptical about that. So one day, when she sees On walking in the hallway, she like Olive grabs the first person she sees and kisses them, and that person is the MMC of this book. He's Dr. Adam Carlson, which now I'm like, oh, Adam. Like Adam. And he's like an asshole hotshot professor that people are like intimidated by and kind of hate. I don't know. I don't know how I felt about this. I just thought it was ultimately incredibly silly. They continue to fake date because Mallory wants to convince On, and Adam, I think, is up for, honestly, I don't even really remember. It was also a little bit forgettable, sorry. Adam is up for a job, and they want to know that he is gonna stay in the area because they want somebody reliable. I'm pretty sure that is the deal, so that's why it's beneficial for him. Any fake dating scheme, any situation that puts two people in a position where they feel like they need to be fake dating is going to be ridiculous. And I know that. I know it's going to be silly. I know it's going to be ridiculous. I can look past it. It's fine most of the time. This time, I was like, I really don't get this. You want your friend to think that you're dating, so that's why you're engaging in this like that. I don't have the relationship with my friends like that where I would be like, oh man, my friend doesn't think that I'm happy. Let me fake a whole entire relationship with a whole other person. Towards the end, because this book had to be about something, Olive goes through sexual harassment in the workplace and it's really bad, and Adam comes to her rescue, which was, heroic, I guess. Also, like, speaking of sexual harassment, they would be making jokes through this whole book because of the way that Olive met Adam, where they'd be like, oh, I guess Adam would say, I guess I could always file that sexual harassment lawsuit. And I'm like, that's not funny. Yeah, like I have in my notes, I was like, I honestly don't remember a lot about this book, which I feel is very telling. I'm usually very forgiving of fake dating scenarios, like I said, but this one just felt like it was for no reason. And I'd rather have a terrible reason that means something, which happens in a book that I will get to in a second, than like a non-reason that doesn't really mean anything. Like it was just harder to get behind. Whatever. Anyway, the love hypothesis is fine. It took book talk by storm. It kind of took booktube by storm. I thought it was overwhelmingly okay. I loved Check and Mate so much. Maybe that tainted my experience, but I'm actually pretty good at like coming into something new. Even though I wanted to have that experience again, I took this book as a whole new experience, a whole new story. I didn't want to put anything on it, and it just like wasn't my fave. It just didn't hit. The next book I read was also a Allie Hazelwood book. I was really trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. I didn't mention that The Love Hypothesis was narrated by Callie Dalton and Teddy Hamilton. This one that I read next is called Not in Love, and that was narrated by Jason Clark and Callie Dalton. I read 3 Allie Hazelwood books in succession, and I liked each one less than the one that I read before, which means that I liked this one the least. I really didn't. I was not into this. And I wanted to be so bad because I really thought that I was going to love the main character so much because of her particular like social awkwardness or just the way that she carried herself unapologetically that was not necessarily what people might deem as like quote unquote normal, but what is normal. This novel surrounds Rue, who is a biotech engineer at Klein, which is a food science startup. Rue loves Klein. She loves working there. She feels a sense of loyalty to her boss for giving her a chance and helping her out. And, you know, it's a close knit group of people at Klein until Eli, with his business partners, comes into Klein and they want to essentially buy the business, like take the business down. And nobody really understands why actually. And is slowly revealed through the book. Rue and Eli develop an attraction that Rue feels incredibly guilty about because, like I said, she's so loyal to her boss and to Klein. Eli is also conflicted about it, but I can't fully get into all of the reasons why because it is a spoiler, but he is kind of like the Romeo to her Juliet in this particular story. So as this legal battle is going on, Rue and Eli have a tryst. Okay, Taylor Swift vocabulary. And they decide that the end date for it is going to be when one of the companies wins out over the other. The premise of the book really interested me. And even as I'm saying it to you, like, I still think that it's a good premise. I just didn't love the execution. One of the problems that I had with this book is that there's so much sex in it, and I'm not a prude when it comes to having intimacy in novels. Like, I can read it, it's fine. But the sex in this book did not feel economic. I think when you're writing a book and it does have sex in it, you don't have to see all of it every time. And if you do see all of it, like if you're with the characters through the entirety of the scene, then it has to do something that also pushes the narrative. And I think for this book, maybe that thing was to establish a sense of intimacy growing between Rue and Eli, that it wasn't just like a physical connection, but that Rue could really trust Eli and finds it difficult to open up to others because of how she's been treated in the past. So I could give it to Allie Hazelwood that like maybe all of the intimacy in the book was to show that there was actual intimacy growing between Rue and Eli. To me, it wasn't done in a way that felt progressive every time, so it just kind of ended up feeling really redundant and ultimately gratuitous. I think that also has to do with the premise of the book, like the we really shouldn't, but we're going to kind of story also usually feels very redundant to me. Like when there are two people who are like, we really shouldn't be doing this, we really shouldn't be together, and then they end up being together. There's only so many times that they can say no, but we're gonna, no, but we're gonna, before I'm like, okay, well, all right. So yeah, this book really wasn't for me. Yeah, this is not my fave. The next book that I read I could talk about for ages. It was A Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare, narrated by Finty Williams, who is the daughter of Dame Judi Dench. I finally finished the Last Hour series last year. I can't believe it took me so long because it actually is one of my favorite series in the Shadowhunter Chronicles universe. This is the 3rd book in the Last Hour, so I kind of can't really go too far in depth into what the storyline is about because it's riddled with spoilers. If you don't know what the Shadowhunter Chronicles is, it starts with the Mortal Instruments. There was a movie made about it that didn't get a sequel, and a TV show made about it that the fandom seldom talks about. It is a book series about a girl named Clary Frey who finds out that she is a shadow hunter. It's very like Chosen One YA fantasy kind of book. She finds out she's part angel. She has to save the world from demons and her evil antagonist villain Valentine. And it has a prequel series called The Infernal Devices, and that takes place in the 1870s. This series, The Last Hours, is about the children of the people in the prequel series. Are you with me? Are you with me? So this takes place in Edwardian era England in 1903. It's giving Bridgerton. First book is about Cordelia Carstairs, who comes to London with her family and then like comes out and does that whole thing, and she's secretly in love with her best friend James. He was a childhood best friend, but he's secretly involved with somebody else, and she's also best friends with James's little sister Lucy, but she can't tell Lucy, so it's a whole thing. At the same time that she is going to London to do all these things, something is brewing in the Shadowhunter world because of course it's filled with demons and bad people, so they have to deal with that. They have to save the world. This series has an incredible cast of characters, which is something that Cassandra Clare consistently does so well, in my opinion. These are probably my favorite characters in the whole Shadowhunter Chronicles. There's a character in these books called Anna Lightwood, who is one of the best characters in the world. She's like this genderqueer, just like queer Shadowhunter who dresses in like the most exquisite clothing. She is beloved by everybody who knows her. She goes to cool like downworlder bars. Like a downworlder is a werewolf, vampire, fairy, or warlock. Obviously, it's a counterculture, so they have really interesting organizations and groups and ways of living that are different from like the uptight Shadowhunters. Ring a bell? The whole thing is incredibly political. The Shadowhunter Chronicles is inherently political. It talks about these disenfranchised people, the downworlders, who have been looked down upon by the Shadowhunters, and it constantly discusses, okay, what does it mean to be a Shadowhunter? If it means being terrible to these groups of people, then that's not something I'm interested in. I have to define my own way of being a Shadowhunter that doesn't involve all of that. I have to believe that there's a compassionate way to engage with this thing that doesn't involve bigotry, essentially. That's one of the reasons why I love the series so much. It really leans into all of those kinds of conversations. Anna is simply one example of a character that kind of goes against norms and is met with love and understanding and acceptance from her immediate family. And that family also includes the most beautiful platonic friendships. Now, it doesn't exist in a utopia. Like I said, there's still conflict in the greater shadow hunter community because there has to be. Also because, you know, this isn't like escapism. There's no naivety in this. To me, there's still like very real vitriol for people like this. But what Cassie does so good in her books is, again, the people surrounding a character that exists in a way that doesn't adhere to the hegemony are always radically accepting and radically loving about that character. And that is one of the main thesis statements of all of the Shadowhunter Chronicles, of all of the books, of all of the like spin-offs and collections of short stories. Like, it's truly beautiful. Also, speaking of spin-offs and short stories, you should read Every Exquisite Thing. You don't have to read any other Shadowhunter anything to read it. Probably there will be minor spoilers if you do want to read something else, or if you've read Shadowhunter Chronicles books but like only the main series and you've never read like the collection of short stories, just read that one. It's all about Anna. It's so queer, it's so funny, it's so lovely, and it's like also kind of heartbreaking. It's like her villain origin story. It's great. I don't think I've ever read Found Family better than Cassandra Clare's books, and that is going to be something that I talk about in a book that I read later on this year. I now, as an adult, have the capacity to love my friends so deeply, and when I think about the origins of that and where it might have come from, I do actually think that these books affected me that way. This particular book, the last book in the Last Hour series, had a lot to accomplish with the incorporations of like the biggest baddies you can get in the Shadowhunter world, which are greater demons. Think names like Leviathan or Asmodeus or Lilith or Lucifer, or like, you know, big bad demons like that. And it had to wrap up the storylines for like all of the characters that were in the book. So naturally it's going to be a little bit longer. I think that this felt a teensy bit overwritten. Even with all of that in mind, I still think we could have cut this down a little bit more. But one thing I will say about these characters in Cassandra Clare's novels is that I think that a lot of them have these martyr complexes that I find I roll my eyes at. I'm just not one to buy into the like, everything is my fault and this thing that happened is obviously on me, and because of that I must put my life on the line constantly and not talk to my friends about what I'm going through, and I will carry this burden completely on my own. I'm like, okay, get over yourself. Like, get over yourself. And I completely get where it's coming from, right? Because the stakes are so high. And something about YA books that I think are important to pay attention to is the strong morality that exists in them. YA fantasy protagonists tend to participate in the struggle between good and bad, and them navigating what they feel is good, what they feel is bad in a world that they are learning about is, I think, is supposed to mirror the way that people as they grow up have to determine what is good and what is bad. But because of that, those traits can sometimes lead into a level of like self-righteousness or, like I said, martyrdom that I don't enjoy reading, because consistently over a period of time, if a person continues to experience like that particular mindset and the people around them are as well, it gets a bit redundant and kind of overwhelming, and I find myself being like, oh my god, please, like, get over yourself. It just becomes a bit emotionally exhausting to read. It feels like if these characters are constantly learning the lesson that they can count on the people around them, they would eventually learn that lesson, and they do, but it sometimes takes a bit longer. I am forever a Shadowhunter girly, and I'm really excited to keep reading through the whole series. The next book I read was one of my favorite books of last year as well, and it was called The Other Significant Others, written by Raina Cohen and also narrated by Raina Cohen, because I listened to this one too. This book changed my life. I was first introduced to this book on Trevor Noah's podcast, What Now with Trevor Noah, which I highly recommend. It's an incredible podcast. He introduced Raina Cohen as the person who wrote his like now personal Bible, and I was like, well, that is like a really huge loaded thing to say. What is her book about? And if you find anything that I'm about to say interesting, you should go and listen to this podcast. It's an hour long. It gives you like a bite-sized version of what you'll get in the full book, which I also highly recommend you read. Raina Cohen is a producer and editor for NPR, and Other Significant Others is about the beauty of platonic love. The book is best described using the research questions it's trying to answer. Why do we assume romantic relationships are more important than friendships? What do we lose when we expect one person to meet all of our needs? And ultimately, what can we learn about commitment, love, and family from people who put friendship at the center of their lives? It discusses people who have friends as their life partners, platonic partnerships. Raina talks about how one of the initial pushes for her to start writing this book was how many weddings she had gone to where in the vows they'll say, oh, my partner is my best friend. And she would think about the responsibility that that puts on someone. Your romantic partner in this current societal structure is supposed to be your best friend, is supposed to be your confidant, is supposed to be the person with whom you make all of your financial decisions, is supposed to be the person that you live with, is supposed to be the person that takes care of you when you're sick, is supposed to be the person that you go to with your emotional problems, is supposed to be the person that you share all your joy with. They have so much responsibility. And Raina is concerned with diversifying that, finding it in people who are not your romantic partners. This book is not an anti-marriage book by any means. Raina Cohen is actually married, and she has a platonic partnership that a lot of people didn't understand. And that is one of the things that I love the most about the structure of this book, is that it's mostly told through interviews with people who have platonic partnerships that their family, friends, like the greater version of like people in their lives don't really get. The research is peppered into interviews with each platonic partnership. And some of these partnerships are not just two people, they are more than two. And each platonic partnership that she interviews represents a different aspect of what platonic partnerships can be, or some questions that other people might have about platonic partnerships, because it's not really something that we talk about or discuss as a viable way of building your life. Things like, what's the difference between a platonic partner and somebody that you're married to? Is it just that you don't have sex with that person? What happens if you don't have a spouse and you reach a point in your life where you need a lot of medical care and you need somebody to support you through that? That person, if it's not somebody who's married to you, has to lie and say that they're family in order to be able to support you in the hospital. What happens if you reach a point in your life where you would like to raise a child, you don't want to do it alone, but you have somebody else who could possibly do it with you? The legality of all of it, which I was struck by and really happy that she included, especially toward the end of the book, which is about all of like the liberties that people who are married have that people who are not married do not have, and how it's pointing to, as an ideology, people, viewing marriage as something that's more valid than friendship, but also as the way that laws are created. And speaking of the ideology, it also talks about grieving friendship breakups that are so difficult. This is the book that I was talking about when I was just talking about the Shadowhunter novels, where I was already on my way to a lot of these ideas, partially because of what I read. I sent this text to one of my friends. I'm making notes on all the books I read last year for a YouTube video, and I'm realizing that part of why my POV on friendship was already so open to being deeply affected by other significant others is undoubtedly influenced by reading how Cassandra Clare writes about platonic relationships in the Shadowhunter series, especially the concept of parabatai. So thank you to Raina Cohen and thank you to Cassandra Clare. Please pick up other significant others. It's really worth your time. Okay, I'm back. I did, in fact, step away for a second. I got some tea. My hair is different. Whatever. Here we go. That's for the ASMR people. I promise I won't do that again. For the misophonia people, I won't do that again. Okay, the next book, I was kind of on a roll when it came to this part of the year last year, because the next book I read was one of my favorites again, and it was The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I adored this book. Casey McQuiston is one of my favorite authors. She's an they're an by author. Actually, I should have looked this up before I started talking about them. I believe they go by they, them pronouns. Let's look together. It's okay to be wrong as long as we care about being right. Are your pronouns on your website? Oh, this is the coolest picture ever. If you guys go on Casey McQuiston's website, they have the hottest picture ever right at the top. Okay, this is actually, I'm really happy that I went to their website, because this is exactly why I love them so much. In their About Me thing, it says, I live at the intersection of fun, escapist, romantic adventure and smart mouth characters with bad manners and big hearts. I mean, name a better niche. I dare you. You can't. Okay, I am not seeing their pronouns on their website, so I'm actually just gonna stick with they, them. But they are one of my favorite authors. They're my auto-buy author. This book was maybe my most anticipated book of the year. I could not wait to read it. Red, White, and Royal Blue is the book that I think I've read the most out of any book I've ever read. I mentioned this in my booktube newbie tag. It used to be Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, but I actually think that Red, White, and Blue now takes the cake. Red, White, and Royal Blue. It takes the cake. LOL. If you know, you know.
With an orange drink, if you know, you know.
Even the books that don't hit super hard for me still have something in them that I absolutely adore. And I think it goes back to what they wrote in their biography for their website. I think it's that. I think it's this epic, escapist, romantic, adventurous spirit that's in them, and it's so deeply romantic, but also kind of with a capital R. It's just really concerned with being rooted in this kind of beauty and romance and sweetness and deep and genuine care for other people. That is a through line into things that I really like and things that I really prioritize in my life. So The Pairing is about these two bisexual exes, Kit and Theo, who have a penchant for everything delicious in life. Theo is the assistant sommelier at the only Michelin-starred restaurant in Palm Springs, and Kit is the chef pâtissier at a luxury hotel in Paris. Did I say that right? Pâtissier. I took Spanish in school. I really wanted to say that word. I was like, okay. I was gearing up for it. Pâtissier. Yeah? Pâtissier? Pâtissier? Who knows? When they were still together, they booked a food and wine tour through Europe, but they broke up at the airport, so they never got the chance to go to that food and wine tour, but they got a voucher instead that basically said you can come back again within the next 4 years at no additional cost to you. So it's coming up on 4 years, and Theo is looking at this voucher and says, you know what, I'm gonna go. I don't want to jip myself with this experience. It's right at the end. I can still make it. So Theo goes to the food and wine tour, gets on the plane, gets on the bus, and who decided to take the trip exactly at the same time as Theo did? Kit! Oh no! Now they're stuck on this like romantic food and wine tour through Europe, like one of the most romantic places in the world. And they're with a bunch of people who came together. Like basically everybody else on the trip is a couple. So they're like, Jesus Christ. They're like totally over each other. Absolutely. So they decide to make a bet. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit. They decide to make a bet to see who can sleep with more locals than the other one in the stops that they're going to. Listen, some people had trouble with that premise, and I completely understand. I like totally get it. Like I said before, when I was talking about what was I talking about? Like the love hypothesis or something. I'm pretty forgiving of certain scenarios. If I know that the action of the book needs to happen in a certain circumstance, and especially if it's like a romance novel or a contemporary novel, I am quite forgiving with how we get to that circumstance because I want to be in the action of the book. I'm like, well, clearly you wanted this to be formatted a certain way, and I'm more interested in what you do with the format that you get to, or what you do with the circumstances that you get to, than I am in how we get to the circumstances. I'm not saying it's not important. Like I said in Love Hypothesis, it like really didn't work for me, but I don't mind as much. And I think also because like these two people are consenting adults and they're like having sex with consenting adults. And from their perspective, like the locals' perspective, this is like a hot tourist that they can sleep with and never have to see again. Do you know what I mean? Like they're using them, but like also kind of they're using them, and it's fine. And actually maybe it's not about using, maybe it's just about experiencing pleasure, and that's okay, because it's not just to spite the other person in the couple for Kit and Theo. They are actually, like I said, they actively have this fire inside of them for the pursuit of pleasure. Actually, Casey McQuiston dedicated this book for pleasure. For people who can't read past this, I get you. I get you. I get you. I get it. I really do get it. Romance novels don't always really hit for me. And that's not to shit on the genre. I think romance novels are very important. I think it's lazy and lame to look down on something that is mostly made by women or people who aren't men and mostly enjoyed by women and people who aren't men. I think that historically every time somebody does that, somebody like craps on something that is for that particular demographic and made by that particular demographic, they are out of touch and on the wrong side of history basically every single time. This kind of romance is my preference within the romance genre. That's all I'm trying to say. Because Casey McQuiston to me is actually funny. And I've read plenty of romance novels that are trying to tell you that they're funny, but they don't make me laugh at all. And I hate that. It's my real pet peeve. But every time I'm reading a Casey McQuiston novel, it's so ridiculous and I laugh so hard every time. It's a similar vibe to another book actually that I'm going to mention a little bit later. Drink every time I say that. But it is. It's like ridiculous and actually funny. It's sardonic and sarcastic. There's a bit of an edge to it, and I love somebody whose sense of humor is like teensy bit of an asshole, but you know that it's rooted in like compassion. To make a long story short, was in fact giggling and kicking my feet. The conversations about queerness that Casey McQuiston puts in their books, I think, are so important, and they always exist in a nuance that brings something new and fresh to each new novel. With this one, it was a lot about gender and gender queerness and gender expression. It's about people seeing you through that and loving you through that, seeing you for who you actually are and not for arbitrary rules that you feel like you need to follow because you were assigned something. These two characters really see each other. And the thing that is great about this book is that it's kind of a couple tropes in one. It's friends to lovers, and then it's enemies, exes to lovers, I guess. So second chance, I guess it's a second chance romance because it's friends to lovers, and then obviously they break up, and then it's like a second chance romance. You see in the beginning of the book this kind of like little vignette, or I guess a couple vignettes, about how they got together in the first place. Like you see the scenes of them realizing that like maybe there's something there that's more platonic, and then throughout the book you get flashbacks to their friendship, so you're still getting a friends to lovers story in a second chance romance story. Theo's transformation that we get to read about is so beautiful to me. And it's about a person who was really struggling and like ran away from intimacy because of a ultimate lack of self-esteem or like belief in themselves, and trying to build a life for themselves that they are proud of, that also like Kit could possibly be proud of, and is trying to prove to themselves but also to like the people around them that they got this and they can do it. And it's not linear. Like, progress isn't linear. It's 4 years, which is a lot of time and also not a lot of time. So you're kind of seeing like the progress bar go like this in terms of where they are now and where they were when they were first, in that relationship with Kit. And I think it's really beautiful to read. There's one point in the book where Kit is kind of describing the fact that Theo runs, and Kit says, they loved themselves so little that they were surprised when it hurt me. Are you joking? Oh, gosh, it's so beautiful. So there are a lot of sucker punches like that in Casey McQuiston novels. You can tell that this was such a labor of love. I mean, everything in it, all of the sights and sounds and tastes in the book felt so visceral. It felt like I was there while I was reading it. It was so poured over. You could really feel the care. It felt really similar to Check and Mate, when you're reading about chess and you can really feel how much Hazelwood cared about chess and had a passion for chess. You could feel so much how Casey McQuiston cared about each of these locations, cared about the people that were there, cared about the food that was being eaten and the wine that was being paired with it, cared about how it was made, cared about how it would smell, how it would feel, how it would look. Like, everything felt so imbued with life that made the entire reading experience like heightened, as almost if I was there. They ended the acknowledgments in the back of the book with "Love you, period, sluts forever, period." I just really love it. I just really love like the celebration of sexuality and pleasure in multiple forms. Sensuality, not necessarily talking about like sexual relationships, but also just like your actual senses, everything that I just mentioned. I really love this book. I really fucking love this book. I think that for me, my Casey McQuiston ranking as it stands is Red, White, and Royal Blue, then this one, then ooh, I Kiss Shara Wheeler and One Last Stop are kind of similar to me. The magic system in One Last Stop kind of took me out of it a little bit. I wonder if I would feel differently if I physically read it rather than listen to it. I really did like I Kiss Shara Wheeler. Actually, okay, so it's the pairing, Red, White, and no, I've made a mistake. It's Red, White, and Royal Blue, then the pairing, then I Kiss Shara Wheeler, then One Last Stop for me. I can't wait till the next one. They've started posting things on their Instagram, like teasing their 5th book. And it's like, it looks like Renaissance vibes or night vibes. I have no idea. I'll put some pictures here. I like cannot wait. I love Casey McQuiston. Also, like, I want to be in every movie that's made about any of their books. Like, I want to act in something. Like, please cast me. Jesus. The next book I read in 2024 was actually the 5-star book, and I'm going to save that till the end. I'm going to tease you a little bit. So we're going to move on to the book that I read after the 5-star book, Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I would show you my copy, but it's currently at the bottom of the stack of books that's holding you up right now, so I can't. This is the book that I was just referencing when I was talking about, like, ridiculous premises and what I said before about Check and Mate, about how, like, or not Check and Mate, about the love hypothesis, about how, like, I'd rather a reason that is an actual reason that is terrible for somebody to fake date than a reason that is a non-reason that is not as bad. And you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So Boyfriend Material was narrated by James Jameson, and I loved this narrator so much because there's a lot of different accents that happen in this book, which is one of the reasons why I like it. It's like a celebration of a lot of different identities in England. It's like people from Wales and people from Ireland, people from the north and the south. There are French people in it. The main character's mother is French. Just kind of felt like a celebration of diaspora in a cool way that I'll get into a little bit later. But this narrator nailed it with everything. I can't wait to like listen to another book that, or I guess reading. Audiobooks is reading. audiobooks is reading. So I guess I can't wait to read another book that he narrates. This is another book that I've reread like a lot of times. It's like a comfort listen. This book is zany and ridiculous. It's definitely not for everyone. Okay, Luke O'Donnell is the main character of this book, and he is kind of peripherally famous because both of his parents were huge rock stars in the 80s. And he has a history of kind of fucking up. He got out of a relationship a couple years ago and it really messed him up. And he got painted as this like debaucherous, like rock star kid who's like into drugs and alcohol and is like kind of off the handle. So after messing up like the big time marketing gigs that he had because he had a good education and was actually like good at his job, but they dropped him because of his behavior, he takes a job as a marketing person for CRAP, which stands for, it's Coleoptera Research Assistance and Protection Program. I can't remember. Essentially what they're trying to do is save the dung beetle because apparently they're environmentally friendly for reasons that they try to explain in the book but don't make any sense. And Luke has the same feeling. I think like he multiple times in the book was like, I could talk to you about why they're important ecologically, but I don't remember and you don't care. He's working at CRAP and he goes to this party, meets this person. It doesn't go well at all. He leaves the party and it's a fancy dress party, as they like to say in England, which basically means like a costume party. I think it's Halloween. So he's wearing these like bunny ears or whatever. He falls, gets photographed, it gets to the press. And a big part of his job at the CRAP Foundation is to fundraise for their big gala at the end of the year. They need donors in order to continue with their work because I think ultimately they're a nonprofit, and it's Luke's job to get those donors to come to the event to do a silent auction to give a lot of money so that they can keep doing their jobs. These donors see the pictures that end up in the press and they are not happy about it. They want to pull out of the gala and they don't want to give their money anymore. So he gets called into his boss's office. And his boss is basically like, listen, I need you to be respectable and I need you to do it fast. And it would be really awesome if you had like a respectable boyfriend so that people saw that you were one of the good gays, if you will, and not somebody who's like absolutely ridiculous. And he was like, this is not okay for you to say to me. But she is so like not into human interaction, not into having conversations, doesn't even really want to be talking to him, so focused on her work. She's like, yeah, sorry, bye. And he's like, what the fuck am I gonna do? He goes to his friends, an incredible group of like found family friends who also are like so ridiculous, each have very distinct personalities, so zany. And he says, I need somebody to date to make me look good so I don't lose my job. Who do you think I should date? And they say, Oliver Blackwood. And he's like, but like anybody but him, though. Oliver Blackwood is perfect on paper. He's the perfect kind of guy that Luke needs in order to save his job. He is a lawyer. He is from a well-off family. He is like sophisticated in a certain way. And Luke doesn't like him because they had a bad encounter at a party once where Oliver was kind of rude to him and thinks that Oliver looks down on him and just thinks that he's like kind of stuffy. He's like, I don't want to be with that person. And they were like, okay, but this is your only option, so do it. And what happens? He goes on a date with Oliver. He tells him what's going on. They agreed to fake date because Oliver also needs a boyfriend for another event that he's going to with his family later, which you read about. And they start fake dating. Fake dating is always going to be ridiculous. Fake dating is always going to, because there's no, like, what situation would you actually be in life unless you were like a celebrity and it's like a PR stunt? And also, I want to know how those go down too. Like, a lot of people say that certain relationships are PR stunts where I'm like, I don't actually think that's true. They might actually like each other, but like, in what situation is like a normal regular person going to be fake dating another person? Somebody let me know if they've ever once heard a sincere account of somebody fake dating somebody else. Anyway, this book again is really funny. It does a similar thing for me that Casey McQuiston books do, in terms of the humor, where I'm actually laughing. I actually think it's ridiculous. It's quite raunchy. It's not particularly like spicy. It's all fade to black stuff. I kind of appreciate how hard it goes into Luke not being a good person. I think I like that a lot too. I think I like reading stories about people who are ultimately incredibly flawed and are going through something in their life that makes it difficult for them to show up for themselves and for other people. I've been there, and I think that there's not a lot of grace by the general public to people who are going through things like that, because it's a lot to do with like possible neurodivergence or mental illness, or if you're going through just like a mental health plummet in general, it makes functioning really difficult. You become a dysfunctional person. And I, again, don't know that it's socially accepted to give a lot of grace to people like that, because you kind of just label them as lazy or as like a procrastinator or as messy or as dirty, when actually they're going through something and they need help. The premise of them fake dating is totally fucked, but it's based on this like homophobia that is present in other parts of the novel that is talked about. Like Luke has to now talk to the people who pulled out of, they call it the Beetle Drive, that big gala that I was talking about. He has to go and talk to the people who pulled out of the Beetle Drive and essentially convince them to stay. These conversations are meant to be a bit ridiculous, but they're not completely unheard of. It's the kind of the point of the story, or one of the points of the story. Like I said, there's a lot of mention of like different diasporas or communities within England that I think is really cool. I learned a lot about Wales and how like England was really shitty to Wales and kind of eradicated their culture in an intense way that I had never really learned about in school. I think I like understood it peripherally, but to have it talked about in this book was really interesting. Luke is also trying to mend his relationship with his father, and the accountability there is really great because you're seeing somebody who made terrible choices talk to somebody else who made terrible choices. But you understand the difference between those two people, and you see that Luke is trying to take accountability and he's trying to deal with like the almost emotional manipulation of his father, who is not, or who pretends that he is. But to the world, it looks like his father is a more functional person than Luke is. Luke's family is so funny. I'm obsessed with the mom in this book. Like, she's great. Yeah, I think this was a really solid read. It's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read for the first time, and it again is at the bottom of, it's right above boyfriend material in the stack of books that is holding my camera up right now, my phone. I read Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and I talked a little bit about this in my booktube newbie tag, so I won't like go super into it. I read this book right before I turned 25, and I was having a lot of feelings about turning 25, and it was the perfect time to read the book. Sometimes a book just like enters your life at the exact perfect time, and it's so serendipitous, and that's what happened with this one. I am obsessed with it. I get the hype. I didn't think I was going to. I think I was thinking that this book was gonna be like, okay, this is like a self-helpy book talk book that I'm gonna read, and it's gonna maybe be a bit cheesy, but I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. I like don't want to put that on this book, like let's just try to erase that from our mind and start from scratch and like really give this book a chance. And I'm so happy that I did, because it was beautiful. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton is a memoir where Dolly essentially examines her relationship to love from her I think it's like late teens, early 20s into when she turns 30. It's not only about romantic love, it's also about platonic and familial love. It's about making reckless choices with your heart and your body when you're younger because you're not examining things that are actually going on within you. It's about how far we go for the people that we attach to in our lives, whether that be healthy or not. It's about how far we go for our friends. It's about how much we are there for our community. It's about somebody growing up, and the emotional maturity that you see acquired in this book is so beautiful to watch and so efficiently executed. I loved it. She's also incredibly funny. She's got that British wit that I prefer. She has essays in this book that are like, every couple chapters in this book you get something fun. You get like an incredible satirical little recipe or fake passive aggressive email or list or playlist. This book made me cry, which doesn't really happen often when I'm reading. This book made me laugh, which I love when I'm reading. This book made me underline things and save things for later, basically every other page. This book is ultimately a celebration of platonic love, and the relationship that Dolly has with her best friend that she talks about in this novel, Farley, is actually a platonic partnership similar to the ones that I read about in Other Significant Others. I don't know that Dolly would classify that relationship in that way. I don't want to ever put that on another person. But while I'm reading it, I'm understanding that the relationship that these two people have is at the center of their lives. And when they build their lives, they're kind of building it almost around that other person that is a friend. And it's not just a friend, it is a friend, like friend with a capital F, because friend has that much significance in Dolly's life as she continues to grow older, and she realizes it as she's kind of doing a retrospective on her life. But she also comes into it more as she gets older, gets more emotionally mature, and seeks therapy and examines her relationship with alcohol and men and why she is putting herself in these certain situations. And it's not an anti-sex book, it's not anything like that. It's a story of somebody becoming more mindful, and that story is told in relation to the loves or things that she thought were loves of her life. I particularly like this quote about it from Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the author of Eat, Pray, Love. What makes this memoir more than mere entertainment is the mature and sophisticated evolution that Alderton describes in these pages. It's a beautifully told journey and a thoughtful, important book. I loved it. The next book I read, like I said, I was really on the roll when it came to the end of the year. I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney for a video that's about to go on my channel. If I could just finish the research. But I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, and it was narrated by, I think it's Aoife McMahon. I really enjoyed this book. It may be my favorite Sally Rooney. It's been a minute since I've read Normal People, to be fair, but I think I like this the most out of all of Sally Rooney's novels. I'm not totally done with Intermezzo. That's the thing that's like keeping me from making this damn video, is that I have to finish Intermezzo. But I like that too, but I don't think it's gonna top Conversations with Friends. So, Conversations with Friends, if you don't know, is Sally Rooney's first novel, and it's about this girl, Frances, who is a young adult. She's in university, and she has a best friendship with somebody who she actually used to date, and her name is Bobby. And now they do poetry together, they do spoken word together. And one day while she's performing with Bobby, there's a person who is this like very well respected journalist and photographer. Her name is Melissa, and she invites Bobby and Frances to her home to get to know about them, to write a piece about them. And she has a husband, Nick, and Frances and Nick kind of realize they have a bit of a connection, and it becomes a book about Frances and Nick and Melissa and Bobby navigating this relationship that they've found each other in, because of course they can't just let it go, and them and Melissa become friends. Friends is a is a generous word. Their lives become intertwined. They become entangled. It's about the entanglement, as it were. This book explores a lot of things. It explores monogamy and non-monogamy. Can ethical non-monogamy really exist? What does every party have to have in order for ethical non-monogamy to exist? It does not villainize Melissa, which is a thing that I really enjoy about Sally Rooney's books in general. You end up in these situations, these like complicated interpersonal situations about love, and you think that the person who is not the protagonist, who is in maybe an obstacle in the way of the protagonist like loving the person of their interest, you think that that person is going to be like the antagonist or like the villain. And I think that you can be an antagonist but not a villain. And I think that that is kind of the role that Melissa plays in this book, because Sally Rooney is concerned with different perspectives and considerately exploring those perspectives. Are we sensing a theme here in the books that I read or what I enjoy about them? But she's really good at placing herself in the position of all of the characters that she writes. She really gives every character the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their own experiences or biases or points of view. Everybody is flawed, and everybody has a reason for their flaws, and everybody is also like simply human. Like, everybody is human. That is the crux, I think, of Sally Rooney's writing and this novel. Everybody is human, and we are exploring like what that humanness is doing to each person in the story. The friendship between Bobby and Frances is, it also kind of feels like an entanglement. It also is an entanglement. It's at sometimes precarious, it's at sometimes very intense. Well, actually, at all times I find it to be quite intense. The people in this book are engaging with the world around them in like heightened intellectual ways, how that kind of sometimes causes tension between the groups of people. Sally Rooney loves to write about class. She loves to write books that involve Marxism, and you see that in the way that they are interacting with each other. I don't necessarily think it's trying to like beat you over the head with it. It's not a textbook, but if you are considerately engaging with the story, then you will see how it affects the way that these people love each other. I also really love the way that Sally Rooney writes about children's relationship with their parents. And this, like, basically everything in her book is extremely Irish. However, it extends to a larger relatability that I've actually never heard anybody write about before. And that happens a lot when I read Sally Rooney, is that she puts words to things that I would never say out loud. Like, I would never say some of these things out loud or even know how to write them down about myself, but I'll read them in her books and feel a kinship with those ideas that I haven't read in any other kind of novel. The next book that I read was another Sally Rooney book. It's Beautiful World, Where Are You?, which is Sally Rooney's third novel. Third novel, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Conversations with Friends, then Normal People, then Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I really liked this one too. I don't know that I liked it as much as Conversations with Friends, but I did super enjoy it. And so Beautiful World, Where Are You is kind of jumping around from a lot of different perspectives. This is, I think, her most expansive book. I think she got more expansive with every novel that she wrote. Beautiful World, Where Are You? You're with 4 characters and you jump from those 4 perspectives. This book is about Alice, who's a novelist who goes to a secluded part of Ireland because she honestly recently had a psychological break, and she meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and they have this connection, and she asks him if he wants to go to Rome with her for a book thing. So they begin their entanglement. And Alice's best friend, Eileen, who lives in Dublin, who just got through a really bad breakup, or kind of is still going through a bad breakup, and starts to flirt with a childhood best friend of hers named Simon, who is an older man. I sincerely don't think I can do a better job in explaining the dynamics of this book than reading the description, because I actually adore the description for this book, which doesn't usually happen. But it says, Alex, Felix, Eileen, and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart, they have sex, they worry about sex, they worry about their friendships and the world they live in. Are they standing in the last lighted room before the darkness, bearing witness to something? Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? And that last question, will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world, is a through line in the whole novel. So you're getting Eileen's perspective and you're getting Allison's perspective in the book. I keep saying Alice's perspective in the book. So you get a POV from one character. The next chapter is an email between the two, and then the next chapter is a POV from the other character. So you are seeing their lives and you're reading their emails. And again, this is a beautiful celebration of friendship. Emails that Alice and Eileen send back and forth to each other are emails that are about the state of the world and the perspectives about the state of the world, and them trying to find their way into it. I will say at first it felt a little bit dense to me, and I was like, am I reading a textbook? But once I got used to the language, I actually devoured that, and they became some of my favorite parts of the whole book. I loved reading their emails back and forth. Eileen and Alice are deeply struggling in ways that you can see them try to communicate to one another, or sometimes really do communicate to one another. I really loved the moment in the book. This is not a spoiler because you see it coming the whole time, but the moment in the book where they're actually in the physical presence of one another and a lot of stuff kind of bubbles to the surface. I really appreciated that particular confrontation. We're still talking about class in this book. I mean, Alice has a tumultuous relationship with her job as a novelist because she wants to write the books and she finds that everything else that comes with it is so agonizing and really difficult. As a public facing person is something that she contends with throughout the novel, but she's in a position of economic and like social power, at least as it's perceived from the outside, and Felix isn't. He works in a warehouse. He is not necessarily like financially well off, and he's from the town that Alice kind of goes to after her psychological break. So seeing them work that out, they really challenge each other and bite into each other about it, which is another thing that I love a lot about Sally Rooney's writing, is that like these characters can sometimes be vicious with each other, but it is human to get to that place sometimes. Yeah, I think this is a great read. I have yet to read a Sally Rooney book that I don't like. So even though I said that Conversations with Friends might be my favorite, I still like really fuck with this one and with all of her other novels. I'm really fucking with Intermezzo. I'm pointing because it's one of the books that's holding my microphone up. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. This came out a couple years ago and it like took the internet by storm and I didn't read it. And finally I did and I get why. Okay, we have arrived at the 5-star book. I'm going to say something before I say what the 5-star book is. I started one book that I didn't finish. Again, I'm looking down because it's holding my microphone up. Maybe it's fine. Hold on, I'm going to show you. The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. This is the first book in the Lockwood & Co. series. I started reading this because one of my friends loves this so much. They're going to be so happy that I'm talking about it if they even watch this video. But yes, they basically made me read it. They love the show so much. I told them that I would watch Lockwood & Co. and try to read the book if they read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. Let's see where I got. I got like halfway through. Like this is my bookmark. I was on page 205 and it's not even that I didn't like it. I just was finding it difficult to get into and continue reading, but I did like it. I liked it a lot. And if I was the age that this book is like targeted for, I think I would have devoured this. It's incredibly British, again, like I really like. It's got that British wit that makes it funny. It's a middle grade novel. So this book is about a girl named Lucy, and it's about a problem, capital P, problem, that's happening in London where all manner of ghosts are present and are like wreaking havoc, and not all of them are benevolent. So children and people who are like younger have a heightened ability to sense them and therefore like deal with the problem than adults do. Lucy is particularly gifted. She has sight? No, she can hear well. She can hear the ghosts well. The ability that children may have to like be sensitive to these spirits is not just like a blanket ability for all of them. Some of them hear them better than others. Some of them see them better than others. Some of them feel them better than others, like whatever. And there are agencies that exist that employ these kids to go to people's houses and other locations and deal with the spirits that might be haunting that particular place. You have to like locate the source of the spirit and then contain the source. So honestly, it's incredibly interesting. It doesn't pull any punches. It gets like a bit brutal, but I like that. I think that kids can handle more than they are usually given credit for. I liked it. I just didn't finish it, but I like probably will go back and try to finish it. We're like watching the series now again. I only got through the first couple episodes and then I was like, I'm not really understanding this. I also kind of want to read the book first. So I stopped watching it, tried to read the book, stopped reading the book, and now I'm starting from the beginning again. Whatever. It's good. Anyway, I'm going to pick up my tea again and tell you about the 5-star book that I read last year, the only 5-star book I read last year, which was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Guys, I finally finished The Song of Achilles. It broke me. Like, I totally get it. It completely shattered me. I was on a road trip. I was going to Virginia And I think I finished it. I was like about to finish it when I got to Virginia, and then I like finished it on the drive back home. Like, oh my God. Like, oh my God. If you don't know what the Song of Achilles is, again, like, welcome to BookTube. It's fine. Like, I am you, right? Every time I say, like, if you don't know what this is, welcome to BookTube, or like, welcome to Book Talk, or whatever, welcome to the internet, it's because I am the same. Where I, case in point, am not reading something usually when it's very popular. I will get to it eventually, and I'll be like, oh, that's what everybody was talking about. I felt that way with like the Sally Rooney books that I was just talking about. I felt that way about Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I feel that way about this book. Oh my god, it's one of the most well-written things I've ever read in my life. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time now. It's so special and like heart-wrenching and intense and exquisitely written. If you don't know what it's about, it is a retelling of the Iliad. And I listened to it, and the audiobook is great. Great. And it's narrated by Fraser Douglas. Like I said, retelling of the Iliad, told from the perspective of Patroclus, who was the best friend. History will remember them as best friends, and did it though? Did history really remember them as best friends? Patroclus is exiled from his home, and he goes to live at this castle with a lot of other boys who are like in similar situations. And he meets Achilles, and he has this deep, soul changing connection to Achilles that's explored in the entirety of the novel, and is one of the most intense, concentrated, like, expressions of feeling toward another person that I've ever read. The plot of this book is epic. It's an epic story about ancient Greece with characters like Odysseus and Agamemnon and Chiron and Helen of Troy. If you've never read the Iliad, that's okay. You don't need to read this. I mean, I had some knowledge of certain things that are happening. Like, the catalyst of this book is taking place in the Trojan War. I guess technically, like, the whole thing takes place as the Trojan War is happening, but like the culmination of the book is like height of Trojan War. So then you start to read about what it's like to exist in this war, which is so harrowing. Something that I really love about this book is that it is about Patroclus and Achilles, but it's also about all of the women that are in this society and the way that it treats them. And it is about them in an expert way. Madeline Miller is she's a genius, because we are not in their perspectives. We're not in their points of view. We're with Patroclus the whole time. And it's never, again, like beat over the head. You never feel beat over the head with it. It's about like the atrocities that happen to them. It's about the social structures that like put them in the position to experience those atrocities, which points to a larger theme about the actual society and the people that are running the society and what is in their hearts and minds that drives them to make decisions like that. All of the ferocity that exists there. And I do believe that this book is incredibly ferocious. There's a ferocity in this book that leaks out in the way that people treat one another, the way they love, the way they hate, the way they fight, the way they feel protective. You're launched into a world where with different harsh rules, one that you get sucked into immediately. It's a very quid pro quo, eye for an eye society that you can feel the heightened stakes of at all times, even in the moments of reprieve that you think that you're getting. There's a beautiful section of this book where Patroclus and Achilles are with Chiron in this forest, and they're living there and learning from him, and it is the most gorgeous little environment, and you want them to stay forever. And it feels like this prolonged period of time, but it also feels like not nearly enough time for them to spend in this essentially like Eden. The writing is a bit dense, but there is a rhythm to it that I think Fraser Douglas honors really well in his performance. It's just like so economically ingeniously written and well executed. This is like an all-time favorite for the rest of my life. I love this book. Guys, and that's it.
That's all the books that I read in 2024. It was only 14 books, but I think this video is gonna be really fucking long. Um, anyway, because I was like, well, it's only 14, so I can talk a little bit more about them. And then I talked a lot, but that's okay. Stay tuned for, I've kind of like blown it already, but the Sally Rooney video. I'm really excited about it. I'm putting a lot of work into it. That should be up soon. And follow me everywhere at Chris Sophia 13. I'd really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Read a book. I don't know if I'm gonna bring the salute back. Should I bring the salute back? I don't know. Goodbye.